host, Anthony Mataloni, and this is the video podcast where I try to get my friends to love the horror genre as much as I do. This episode, we will be discussing the 1979 horror sci-fi movie, Alien, and I'm joined by my friend, Trev Campbell.
Well, hello there.
Why, hello there, sir.
I would say it is an impossible goal that you've set for us today. To get people to love horror as much as you is just, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it's more of to get other people to appreciate horror, not to match my level of enthusiasm.
I mean, just by looking at what's behind you on camera, it's kind of hard to get to that level for anyone.
That's true. But this is your first time you've actually seen anything Alien? Or is this just the first time you've seen Alien?
This is the first time I've seen the movie Alien. I have seen one other Alien movie, which was the 2004 Alien vs. Predator movie that takes place in Antarctica. So,
wow, it's been a while since I've seen that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend a rewatch of it.
You're ugly! Son of a...
I am interested, though, but I'm sure it's not good.
Nope. The CGI in it definitely doesn't hold up, and it's much worse than the practical effects in this movie, like, by far.
I feel like there wasn't really much practical effects in that one.
No.
But that's what I love about this one, is the level of craft to it is, I think, just something you can't ignore, even if you like dislike the movie or it's just not your thing. The design of it's unbelievable.
It's just beautiful. I mean, the level of detail just all over the ship. You're just thrown into this environment. It's so viscerally real.
I mean, from like the very top of it like immediately sets the tone, and I forgot the slow reveal of the title.
Oh my god.
Like just like symbols that's true genius in design. I could just go on about just like I love this and I love that.
Yeah. The production design just overall, I mean, just everything from start to finish was just perfect. I was kind of surprised with how much I really, really enjoyed the movie. Like the horror aspect of it was cool and everything, but just like as a film is really, really well done.
Yeah. Well, so because I can't actually recall the first time I saw this movie, but was there a moment or time where it either like clicked with you, or like you were like, oh, I'm into this, or was there not necessarily that like aha moment?
I really liked when they landed on the planet and they saw the crashed spaceship. And then once they were like on the planet going through, and they kept doing, which I'm sure was done for like the first time ever, when they were doing the video footage from the helmets. Yeah, that tossed me right into the movie. I was just like there as soon as they got on the planet.
I actually never thought about that, but you're probably right. That sort of like found footage, almost like point of view of on screen. I never
It's funny because I was sitting there like, classic Cloverfield. I was like, wait a minute, this is 1979. This is like 40 years before any of that happened. So yeah, it was so awesome.
That's also funny to think that that's probably not even necessarily 100% like them trying to make it scary, but more of the technological limits that were of the time, that it's going to be staticky look like this, because we basically barely have VHS, let alone all of it.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about the aesthetics of that, is because of this was like we're not even in the 80s yet, and that's the limitation of it, but it really works because it is such a like working class ship. Like it's not a vessel that we're on. It's like the working man's spaceship, which I just find a lived-in environment so much more interesting than that kind of like really sleek, polished, clean thing.
Yeah, and honestly, the only part of the movie that really took me out was when they actually went into that like mother room or whatever with all the blinking lights, because they tried to make it look so fancy, and it was like, all right, let's get through this.
That's so funny because that is my least favorite part too. But I think I always project something on top of it where I feel like it must be used in another movie that it's like ripping off of this. But I always think he's going to type in like, what is our like survival chances, and it's gonna come up with like a percentage or something.
Yeah.
Like I always expect it to be dumber than it is. I was like, oh right, that's not in this movie. Like they were smart about it. But you're totally right. That aesthetic, because they're obviously inspired by like 2001: A Space Odyssey,
Right.
and Star Wars, but that is the most where it's like, oh well, you were just like directly taking from that rather than being your own thing. It does stick. Those are my least favorite scenes as well.
It also doesn't work with the plot a whole lot. Even with the reveal of like Objective 937 or whatever, I was still like, was this necessary? Like, it just wasn't.
No. You could lift that or have Ash like convey that information in a different way, or like on a regular monitor.
Yeah.
Or like the cockpit. Like I agree that could be cut.
Also, with that in mind, with the whole Ash thing in mind, he's a robot.
That line always makes me laugh.
It's a robot. Ash is a goddamn robot.
It's dated now.
Yeah.
I'm sure it added to the reveal at the time, but it's so basic.
Yeah.
It's very funny. But this being your first time, like there's certain movies where it's you take for granted what people already know. Or like there's just certain reveals in movie. Was there certain surprises in this? Like, were you familiar with the face hugger or the chest burster scene or the Ash? Was any of that a surprise? Like the fact that the alien blood is acid.
So I didn't know that the alien blood was acid. I knew about the face hugger and the chest explosion and stuff just from like honestly pop culture references. I'd never actually seen it, which was kind of cool to see that. The acid blood, I definitely did not know about. And when they melted the floor, I was like, how the fuck did they do that? It looks like they're melting through concrete. Like, it's so good.
No, I love that effect. There's some incredibly clever, minimalist effects in this that work so well. Like, there's obviously really big ones too, but things like that, it works so well. Yeah, it's like, it's gray styrofoam, and they just are melting it with like alcohol or whatever, and it's just, but the effect looks perfect.
The other thing too is I had known about the chest bursting scene and like the face hugger and stuff, but like seeing it and like seeing him come in and have it hugging his face, it's such a gives you chills kind of scene.
I wish we weren't in this pandemic so I could have been like there. I love watching a movie with someone who hasn't seen it before, just to like get their reactions and
You know what? I'm not a very reactive person. Like when watching movies, like I didn't really like I wasn't sitting there like like it was more
exactly.
internalized. But there was one scare when Dallas is going through the air ducts. And she's like, Dallas, it's coming towards you. Dallas, get out of there.
Move, get out of there.
And he's sitting there and there's just, you see darkness on both sides of him. And I'm sitting there like, this is pretty freaky. And then when the alien shows up, oh my God. It very rarely happens to me, but they got me.
That's really so exciting. That's great.
Yeah.
I think those scares work so well in the movie because of the design of the alien and the fact that it is like, it's known as a xenomorph because it does take on aspects around it, which I think is very interesting. But I would have so been curious to see what the xenomorph would have looked like if it was on Earth, because on the ship it's very mechanical look. Like he hides within like the cables and just like the ridges of the ship. I just love the chameleon factor to it. Is so scary because there's times when she's like Ripley's going down the hall and you see something, you're like, oh, it's its tail, or and it's not. It's great. I love the aesthetics of this whole movie.
It's such a claustrophobic ship, but they still you see so much in every shot. And when what's his face is looking for the fucking cat, which is a whole nother thing that we could go into.
I love that scene. The tension building is perfect.
It's beautiful the way they build the tension. My one problem is when they actually had the paper script and were reading through it, did they seriously put like 45 Jonesies in there?
Jonesy?
Because it was just Jonesy. Jonesy.
Jonesy?
And then he go into another room and it's like, Jonesy. It's like, all right, we get it. You're looking for the fucking cat.
That's so funny that you point that out, because I thought at that same scene, in just having written scripts myself, how long was this script? What was it? Because there is a lot of long space and whatever. I think it ended up being like a 78-page script.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But what even makes up the 78 pages? Because it does seem very limited in that. I was like, it must just be like all description, like very little dialogue.
It's just the Jonesies.
Jonesy?
He walks into a room, ominous, lighting, blah, blah, Jonesy.
Jonesy?
And then he walks into the next room and wets his head and then Jonesy.
Jonesy?
I was like, we get it, what his name is. Like, he's the one, the cat is the one who has the most memorable character name because it's said more than any other characters in the entire movie.
I mean, Ripley, but that's almost more of like what she becomes rather than like it sticks with you more because of like later on movies more than maybe necessarily this one.
But because even at the end, she's looking for the Jonesy cat, and now she starts saying Jonesy over and over again. I'm like, why is so much emphasis placed on this cat? Towards the end, when they're trying to escape, and Sigourney Weaver is like looking for the cat, it's like, what are you doing? Like, it killed half your crew. Why are you still looking for this cat? Like, you're trying to escape, and she's like in the thing, and then hears a meow and is like, I'm gonna go look for it.
Jones?
It's like, you should not go look for that cat.
Yeah, that is kind of like the perfect save the cat example. It's just, it's so late in your movie, but it is like, it's just showing that, because Ripley is the most intelligent, she's the most rational, but that's almost going beyond it. Just be like, this is how sympathetic she is, that she needs to go back to save the one other living creature on this spaceship, even though it might result in her death.
Well, she's like quarantined those 3 motherfuckers who went to explore the spaceship, but she's like, hold on, I gotta save the cat before we blow this thing sky high.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You were willing to sacrifice 3 humans.
It really is like, this is the warning of like, take quarantine serious.
Yeah.
Like, this should just be the advertisement for right now.
Seriously, Fauci should have just like mailed everyone a DVD of Alien.
Yeah, this is what happens when you don't follow protocol.
Think of the facehugger as COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, it's brutal.
So yeah, I want to hear more about kind of your reaction to maybe other details of the movie.
Well, I mean, as a sound engineer, I've really I hyper focused on that, especially because it's a main component of the movie. I think is just the sound design, the noise that's happening. I mean, the alien noise, the ambient noise, the sounds of the spaceship, and all that. And I was pleasantly surprised throughout the movie how well they did with that. Because right in the beginning, I was so turned off by when they all get to their controls and then the one person like announces over the loudspeaker and they get that like external shot of the space rig and it's like blah, 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 blah. We're contacting like really loudly to Earth, like maybe they'll hear us. Flirkety flirk flirk over the loudspeaker, like yeah. So
that's funny.
That was no good. That was definitely no good.
I love the sound design in it. I think the alarms sound so unique. I love the countdown.
Yeah.
And, like the tension that builds with that sound is so good, especially with. I think the sound and music actually do a lot of work with the extending the very like long shots where like nothing's really happening or it's very slow paced or it's just helping build up. I think there's great stuff with that too, but I agree there are some sound choices here and there that still kind of irk. Like, I think this movie has the best tagline of all time. In space, no one can hear you scream is perfect marketing. But
see, but that makes no sense with that introductory transmission.
Exactly. And those explosions sure are loud for space. Like,
yeah. If they can't hear you scream, then how can you hear everything that happens in space?
Yeah. So it is kind of like working against itself in certain bits, but like I don't think it really was until like Firefly that they were really playing with the idea of like there is no sound in space, and that tagline was created after the fact, but it would have been better if they had kind of worked that into the sound design a little more, because there's some loud noise. Like that ship explodes 4 times when she's getting away. And I hate the sound design in that bit.
Yeah, so when Brett is trying to find the cat, he goes into that room where the chains are dangling and the water's coming down, and the chains, they put in like these weird chime noises for it, and they're like so like in your face.
Disagree.
Like, yeah, you can't like hear, he's like walking through and it's just like ding dong ding. That's not like the sound of chains. Like that's not what...
see, I think it sounds normal to me. Like
no.
For how long those chains are, and like I like the sound.
I was so out of it as soon as they started. It was like it was too musical for the chains to be clanging like that, and it was so loud and in the forefront. And it seemed like they were trying to merge it so it would be like a score through the use of the environment, which is such a cool idea. It just didn't work for me. So it totally
weird. It works for me. I really like that. Yeah. In fact, I don't have a problem with the music. I think it's understated in a good way, and I don't think that really had been done at that point, because it was a lot more like very like Star Warsy themes, or like I liked that they kind of pulled back and it was more understated. I can see why now it is almost overdone, but I don't know. I can't think of really something else of the time that used things in that way. And Jerry Goldsmith is the one who wrote the music, and he's done tons of, like, there's too many things to even count, but I don't think he had really done horror at that time. So
he wasn't an adorer of horror?
No.
Oh. That's a shame.
he was an ignorer of horror.
He was an ignorer of horror. Classic. The one thing that this movie nailed was you're on that spaceship. Like, they put you in it and you see everything. You're in the environment. You're with the characters when they're doing everything. And you're just like, you're on board. You know, you're not an observer. You're part of the crew, which was, for me, like, such a key for bringing in the horror element of the alien, because you're on the spaceship. Now you're in it and there's an alien on the spaceship and you can't escape.
I can see why people now wouldn't necessarily have the patience for a movie like this, but I love it because I just feel like I'm living in that world, in that tone. It's weirdly relaxing for me, because I like when they take the time for you to feel eased in there.
Well, I was so happy that there was no love interest story. Like, for the love of God, we didn't need another one of those. And I was so happy this didn't do it, because there was kind of like a Dallas and Ripley kind of thing. Like, oh, will they, won't they? But like, there really wasn't any of that. I was just expecting it because of every movie I've watched in the last 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, Ripley was initially written to be a guy. That's like a known thing of like why it was interesting that they cast a female for that lead. And I think that's more of like not necessarily it's ended up being more of like a female empowerment thing, but I think it was initially not done at the time for that purpose as much as like this is a trend that's happening right now. Like, Halloween is Laurie is the strong female character that kind of pops up, and that come out the year before. I think it was almost like them deciding this is a trend at the time, but that's interesting. But I'm also kind of glad they didn't necessarily just go down any kind of love route, because it would feel weird in the context that, in that environment that they were creating, where it is so like work. Like I think that's also why I like it. It's like I've had that where it's like there's just work people, and it's like we don't get to know each other, so therefore there is no character development between this relationship. It is a work relationship, which helps with that tension too, of like no one's seeing eye to eye because none of these people know each other. They're in cryo-freeze sleep all the time, and when they're not getting to know each other. They're just talking about when are we getting fucking paid.
Yeah.
It works for me because of that.
No, and I definitely think it works for the film too, because now you're in this crisis situation and everyone's like, oh, I don't even fucking know you. Yeah. And now we got to survive this alien attack? Like, come on. And then, everyone's just being dicks to each other.
I think that also plays into the way that set is designed. That set was all really a piece. There's no flyaway walls. That was an giant studio where it was all constructed together. So when you're getting on set, you have to go down the corridor. There is no beelining to anything. They built that entire hub. Yeah, it's incredible. But that, I think, leads to that claustrophobic feeling that the movie has, but also that's real tension in the actors not wanting to be on set so close to each other all the time, and they just have to. And then you just think about the actor who was playing the xenomorph.
Oh, I can't. Nope.
They did not. That was not at a time when you cared about actors, let alone like the stunt, kind of people. And he wasn't even an actor. He was just a 7 foot,
a PA,
nearly 7 foot tall student. They found in a pub. Yeah, literally, they were just in a pub. The casting director saw him and was like, yeah, you're gonna be.
You
in
look
this.
like an alien. Come here, you alien dude.
Yeah, it's his only acting role because like he couldn't even sit. They had to like create like there was no care to think about this. He was just in that suit all day. Going into this movie and watching it, what were your expectations, and like how did it live up to those as well? Like, can you see why this would be considered like a horror icon?
Totally. Going into it, I was kind of expecting a lot more campiness and like a lot more like of the era looking things. Right. I really expected it to be dated. And something that actually kind of surprised me was they didn't put a date on it. Like they started off with a shot of the rig and like what it was doing and stuff, which was interesting, even though they didn't really do any of that afterward.
I do have a year, but I think it's not stated until the sequel.
Oh, really?
I find it interesting because in just over a year, we will be exactly 100 years away from that reality. It apparently takes place in 2122. But I think that's almost like retconning kind of stuff that they do in Aliens. But because I like that too. Like
I was just surprised because, that seemed like something that you would do. Like, oh, this is the future, so it's going to be 39, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't do that, and I was glad because it then, like, the robot of Ash made sense. And the jankiness of the computers made sense because there's no actual time period to put it in. So that made it, like, timeless just in a fictional sense. But also, I just was surprised at how good everything looked. Like the eggs and the face hugger and like the blue mist and like just stuff that you're like, wow, everything looks really good and doesn't look cheesy and campy.
Yeah, does this make you interested in actually seeing any of the other sequels, or is it kind of like I feel like I'm topped off here?
I can't imagine them being any better. I would be interested in seeing some of the sequels just for the hell of it. But I I'm guessing they're not going to be as good as this one.
People argue that Aliens is like one of those that's like better than the first movie. I absolutely disagree. I don't think it's a bad movie, but if you want the cheesiness that you thought of, that movie has so much stuff that I think gets worse and worse as it gets older.
Look, I'm telling you, there's something moving and it ain't us.
Get them out of there!
It's still a fun movie, but it's one way more action than horror, and to me way cheesier and goofier, and I don't find that as appealing as this movie. I just love the feeling of this movie, so I'm glad to hear that that actually still like grabbed you in a similar way, where you could just appreciate it on that level.
Well, I also like that it wasn't an action film. You know, it wasn't a sci-fi, we're all shooting laser guns. It was like a legitimate, realistic horror flick. Like, you and your crew go check out an SOS signal, and then all of a sudden there's fucking aliens on your spaceship. Like, that's horrifying.
Then I would say don't watch Aliens, because that's the only other one considered good, and you just described scenes from that movie.
Okay.
I will though say my favorite alien thing outside of this movie is this game. Alien Isolation is so good.
Ripley, I hope to God you can hear this. Something's gone wrong.
One of the scaredest I've ever been playing a game. The design, everything of that game is so good. It's very slow because it's a lot of stealth stuff, but it's you just hiding from the alien. It's fucking horrifying because it basically just puts you in like Ripley's shoes, and I love it. It's so if it didn't scare the shit out of me, I'd be like replaying it all the time. But like I love that this has captured that feeling more than anything else since Alien, and I love it for it.
I feel like playing a game like Alien Isolation while we're in quarantine is probably not a great idea.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's so true.
Just for your mental health. Like, I'm going to isolate from everybody. And then play a game with isolation in the title. Let's do that.
Exactly. Especially while that's going to scare the living shit out of you. I've never screamed at a game. I could, middle of the day, does not matter. Just like, no, no, no! It's this game, no, no!
So if I wasn't scared enough by this movie, I should get
if
that
you want to
game.
literally give yourself a heart attack.
That's what I'm looking for, actually. I was thinking about something to give me a heart attack.
Well, Trev, thank you for taking the time to watch this movie and give one of my favorite genres a chance.
Of course. It was really fun adoring some horror with you.
This has been Horror Adorer. If you have your own suggestions for a movie, video game, graphic novel, or anything else horror-related that you would like us to discuss, then please leave it in a comment below. Thank you so much for joining us. Keep it creepy.